Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Donald Grodoff, family coach with FamilyOCD.com and FocusedHealthyFamily.com. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast series, I delve into the hidden characteristics of OCD, anxiety, and anxiety disorders. The things that most people don't see, that are behind closed doors and shut within the mind about anxiety. My goal with these podcasts is to bring about awareness of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, or OCD. Understand that I am not a doctor, therapist, or counselor, and the content, information, resources, and ideas that are talked about and brought up here in these podcasts are things that I have used, discovered, or have been recommended to me, and I always recommend to seek additional professional help in finding solutions for yourself. Thank you for listening and enjoy the podcast. This podcast was recorded May 23rd, 2019. This is podcast number 30, 7 lesser-known OCD types. And this particular podcast is based on an article I read by Shayla Love. That's Shayla Love, Shayla Love, who's a staff writer at Vice. And you can find Vice at www.vice.com or www.vice.com. And this article is from March 7th of 2019. And in the article, Shayla herself mentions that she too suffered from a very early age with OCD, and especially with one called hyperawareness or sensory motor OCD, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And I thought it was important to at least talk about and bring up these different types, because one of the reasons they're lesser known is because they are ones that are a little harder to talk about, a little more embarrassing sometimes to talk about, so people don't want to bring them up. And so I wanted to bring them out, get them out there so people know them, understand them, and if by chance you are suffering from one of these, that you're not ashamed of bringing it out, because I think it's very important to bring it out. OCD is one of the more manageable disorders that are out there and can be handled. And so, I want to see anybody be able to get through their OCD and be able to manage it so they can live a normal, fairly normal life, let me put it that way. So that's why I'm bringing these up. So the first one she talks about is Hyperawareness OCD, also known as sensory motor OCD or somatic OCD. And about 2 months ago, I went through and did a podcast based on sensory motor OCD, which is, like I say, this hyperawareness. So I'm not going to go dramatically into it because you can go back and listen in there. But what it is the worry or anxiety that's based around natural involuntary actions, say, of the body. In other words, things like swallowing, breathing, blinking, etc. And it's not so much the worry about doing the blinking or the swallowing or whatever. It's about the worry that you're never going to stop thinking about worrying about the action or the involuntary action of blinking, swallowing, whatever. So it really has to do with the involuntary bodily functions, but more so about just worrying that you're never going to be able to not pay or not have this hyper awareness of it, that it'll always be there. You always think about it and get thoughts around it. The second one is emotional contamination. And this one is about obsessing of the traits of someone else will become your own or infect you. So in other words, if you get around somebody that you feel is maybe they're mean, Maybe you consider them immoral, or they're uncaring, or they're liars. They lie, or they're narcissistic. And you're afraid that that trait will somehow infect you and you will become that same trait. So that it's an emotional obsession, basically. They believe that it can spread through air, through the internet, or just in association with somebody else. Yeah, everything and anything can be contaminated at any time with this. Even a negative experience with somebody could, they believe, could be infecting them. So number 3, pedophilia OCD. Obsession that a person might be attracted to a child and actually act on that attraction. So these people fear that just by they gave the example, one of the examples they gave in the article was somebody changing a diaper and noticing the penis or the whatever of the private parts of the baby, and believing that they're attracted to it in some way, and that they're going to do some kind of sexual thing or even a harmful thing to that child. And one of the big problems of it is, of course, like I say, the fear of harming them, which is another type of OCD. But the avoiding some children. And the problem with that, too, is because, one, kids, of course, are lovable and cute, and you want to hug them and hold them and that kind of thing. And especially if it's somebody that you love, to avoid them is difficult. It's uncomfortable. It's, not understandable by the parents or by, the other members of your family or whatever. And it's kind of scary, like I said, because you want to be around kids because they're cute and they're adorable and they need that attention and all that, but this kind of throws that off. Number 4 is perfectionism, obsession with appearing and being perfect. And here, there's another one that's called Just Right OCD that I feel like falls into the same kind of category. And I don't think it's really a lesser known as much, but I really believe perfectionism falls into most of OCD in a way. That's just from my experience dealing with it. It's harder to gain insight into it because it's really wrapped around somebody's personality. And those people believe that they have to achieve at a higher level, trying to go towards that perfectionism. And one of the things I always say about perfectionism is I think, originally I always thought that as I looked at perfectionism as it's not attainable, it's not achievable, it's way up there and you're just never going to be able to reach it because it's really not, there is no such thing. But then in recent years I started thinking about that it can be looked at another way, that all of us are perfect just the way we are. God's creation, I always say God didn't have a quality control department that, would look for flaws that would knock you out of being developed, So, and two, it's a hard thing to accomplish, and it tends to make people that have this issue very rigid and controlling because it has to be done correct or don't do it at all. Very rigid, very black and white. Number 5 is scrupulosity. And this is the obsession with morality, being good or evil, sinning, or blaspheming against God. It's a lot to do with kind of a religious or spiritual aspect of worrying that you're going to go to the dark side, that you're following the wrong crowd, or that, you have anxiety just over the fact of thinking about Satan, or somebody mentions Satan or the devil or hell, and you believe that that's a powerful force within you. So, and scrupulosity, I don't think, again, is one that's lesser known. I think it is actually known, but it's probably not one that people like to talk about because, again, it's an embarrassing thing. And it's the way, Christianity is set up, and or I shouldn't say just Christianity, but religion is set up. It makes a lot of guilt in there, which just really adds to that problem. So, that there's a lot that has to be done there. But if you're feeling that, I think it's important to find an avenue to be able to get past it. Um, Number 6 is homosexuality OCD. This is the obsessing over the fact that you believe there's a chance that you're gay. And it doesn't mean that you are, and it's not really people that are gay that they're having this. It is a regular heterosexual kind of person that just believes there could be a chance. Even if they're dating somebody or even if they're involved with somebody or married, they can still have these thoughts. And they're focused a lot on if they get an arousal. A lot of times people during their sleep, especially men, can get aroused during the night just from the rubbing of the sheets or the underwear rubbing or whatever, or dreams for that matter. And person that has this homosexuality OCD then believes that they may be gay because of that. They may be homosexual because of that. And they don't really have any issues or anything like that with gay people. In fact, they're okay with them. Or even if they're not okay with them, it doesn't really have to do with that as much. And then finally, the last one that they mention, number 7, is harm OCD. And here again, I don't believe that's a lesser one. I believe that's a one that's known. But again, with harm, a lot that I've read is that people do have trouble talking about it or getting it out because they're worried about what their family's going to think or what their spouse is going to think, what people they love are going to think, and what are they going to make other people worried about them because are they going to get harmed? The spouse in the night is she or he going to get harmed because of this? And a lot of times they have thoughts that they've already done something, that they've already killed somebody and dumped them in a grave somewhere, or dumped them somewhere. And so they go through this obsessive thought of that they might have already done it, let alone that they could do it, but they might already have done it. So they don't really want to talk about it because one, it could be a crime. 2, it could worry those around them. And it's just really embarrassing to be able to tell somebody that you have these thoughts and feelings that are this obsessive about hurting or killing somebody. So again, I bring these things up to kind of bring light to them. I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing these out, talking about these, because it's important to know that it's not you. OCD is not you. It is something that goes on within you that is hard to get past. It's hard to deal with, but you can deal with it. That's the big part of it. So again, just to kind of recap, the 7 different lesser OCD types: hyperawareness, or sensory motor or somatic OCD, emotional contamination, pedophilia OCD, perfectionism OCD, scrupulosity, homosexuality OCD, and harm OCD. I hope in some way this has helped you and helped you to be able to maybe come out about it and help you get through it. Because as in all OCD, most of this stuff is not got any truth to it. So you just have to be able to change that thought pattern that goes with it. And I can help you with that through natural processes of EFT and ERP. So if I can help you, let me know. But I will let it go here, and thank you for listening. You take care. This concludes this podcast. We really would appreciate your comments. Simply leave a comment at www.invisiblewheelchair.com. There, you're able to submit a comment that will help us determine future podcasts. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email don@invisiblewheelchair.com. Remember, there is a corresponding tapping recording for each of the podcasts, with the exception of the interview podcast. You can find these tapping recordings and archive past podcasts at www.invisiblewheelchair.com. Finally, there is relief for OCD, and we at FamilyOCD.com and FocusedHealthyFamily.com can help you find that relief. Again, you can contact us through those sites, FamilyOCD.com or FocusedHealthyFamily.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at InvisibleWheel1, that's the number 1, or at FamilyOCD. So thank you for listening. Keep tapping and transcending your life to new heights.